Там всі вже зареєструвалися офіційні особи, вплоть до президента.
Ми дуже відкриті. Ми навіть маємо там свої наші довідки.
Це ще, мені здається, може 2 роки тому саме зробили пишні, що на тих соціальних судових посудах, не знаю, хто які. Це саме активно ваші. Ну, це часовий кінь. Я дивлюся, що мені рекомендують. Ну, не тільки мені, всі рекомендують. Це можливо звісу.
А от текст, бачиш, тематичні зміни.
Добрий день, я вітаю.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us in Ukraine Media Center, Ukrinform. My name is Olha Atamanova. It's been 10 years of the war, and today is day 643 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor. And I want to thank all the mass media who work on telling the world the truth about our fight and our heroic resistance. So today we have invited all of you to discuss a very interesting topic. We will have a presentation of a study that we are about to discuss, a study dedicated to YouTube. We will be talking about YouTube algorithms. We will talk about conspiracy and propaganda as one of the tools that can be used by YouTube as well. Let me introduce our speakers today. Joining us are Roman Kulchynskyi, editor-in-chief of Text.org.ua, Serhii Mikhalkov, journalist at text.org.ua and one of the authors of the research. Also joining us are Oksana Romaniuk, executive director of the Institute of Mass Information, Eduard Sukharev, expert at SubSub, a YouTube development company, and Mykola Balaban, deputy head at the Center for Strategic Communications and Information Security. Good afternoon, dear friends. Mr. Roman, let's start with you. We understand that YouTube is one of the most popular media for Ukrainians, one of the sources of information for them. So what was the goal of your study? What did you want to study and what are the results? Well, YouTube, how do people watch YouTube? People look for a video and then an algorithm starts recommending something to them. So we've decided to study how those recommendations work. We've got this idea a couple of years ago. We were having this idea for a couple of years now. And then, thanks to the support of Serhii, we were able to come up with a study. Like, look, sometimes the children are watching some cartoons on YouTube and then a Russian propaganda pops up. So how does it work? This problem was studied in the world years ago. There is a study already on the way their algorithms work, and there was a case when an American engineer pensioner was watching a video, and then eventually that grandpa became an adept of the flat earth. He started quarreling with his family and then had to leave eventually, but that was in America. Here we are more concerned about Russian propaganda. We were looking for funding, and meanwhile YouTube has taken some steps. They removed a little bit of Russian propaganda and they cut it off, but they removed only the tip of the iceberg, and the rest that was underwater, so to say, it remained there. So we were studying why does it happen so that if a person switches YouTube on, they eventually end up watching or being recommended a Russian propaganda video. So it was a long project. We were doing it in 2 countries, Ukraine and Poland. So I'll tell you a little bit later what was the difference in perception. So what was the way we were doing it? We've created an application that volunteers were able to install on their phones. The volunteers found for us by sociologic company InfoSapiens. We were cooperating with them. So they've picked people for us from different social strata, from different places, and they installed that application on their computers, on their desktop computers. And that program was tracking what YouTube recommends to them. We didn't include the mobile phones because it was technically very difficult. Then we were analyzing the data that we've collected, and we were trying to sort out how the YouTube algorithms work. Also, we were making the same study in Poland. We found a sociological company who selected people for us, who installed our application, and we were collecting the information from them. So what's interesting, in Poland there's a lot of, well, the misinformation is present in Poland, but to a lesser extent, because in Poland people don't watch political news in YouTube. All those bloggers that we were studying, you know, Aristovich and another bald one, so you know, Zhdanov, yeah, like all of them. So they're not being watched in YouTube. People visit normal media for the news, and they watch YouTube for entertainment purposes. And Russia still tries to foist their anti-Ukrainian propaganda over there in between the entertainment videos, but not to the extent it happens in Ukraine. So this is what we were working on, and now Serhii will tell you in detail about the project itself and the results. So, Mr. Serhii, how many people did your study cover, and is it real that YouTube works in a way to foist us not only Russian content but also misinformation? Well, thank you very much. Talking about the number of people in Ukraine, our study covered 205 Ukrainians. In Poland it was 122 YouTube watchers. So talking about the intensity of promotion of propaganda or misinformation, basically on the example of our specific users, we were able to see that the harmful content is pretty intensely represented in YouTube. As Roman has mentioned, our application was collecting data according to the recommendations, and we had more than 800,000 cases of information on different videos. So basically 205 Ukrainians that were covered by our study. Among them we've identified two personalities. We've coded their names, but they are the real persons. So we've called one of them an ambusher, a person who spends a lot of time on YouTube and who follows the recommendations, and another one was called botnik, basically a person who consumes specifically Russian media product, video content. And if we start our discussion with an issue of propaganda, so let's start better with botnik. What's interesting about them? It's a commonly known fact that the story of the views influences what YouTube recommends to the users. And basically in our study we were able to identify that in average 15 to 20% of the videos that were recommended, they then end up among the videos that were viewed by that consumer. So talking about botnik, we've identified that that's a person that consumes Russian content. For example, on that very day we've seen Diana Panchenko, a Russian video blogger, among their recommendations. So how does YouTube react to that? YouTube promoted 9 recommendations, and all of them were pro-Russian channels, including those prohibited in Ukraine, like Strana.ua, Ясно Понятно, and we've seen that that person was viewing those videos too. But we've also seen that there were other videos recommended of a propagandist nature, like authored by Yakov Kelme. It's interesting to cover how do they insert their pro-Russian recommendations in different categories. Yes, this is exactly what I wanted to proceed to. Yeah, you please interrupt me in case if necessary, because I can talk a lot. So basically one of the factors that influences recommendations is the story of viewed videos. So what we were able to identify, so if YouTube recommends you a video, it tries to recommend a video that would be useful for you, to personalize those recommendations, so to say. And for example, you're watching, I don't know, a video about a tennis game, and then you are being recommended more tennis videos, but it does not only analyze you, but it also analyzes people with other interests. So if another person watches a video on tennis and culinary art, then you will have that recommendation with culinary art video too. So if you're watching a misinformation propaganda video in your YouTube, it will then amplify the interests of other users, and you will have more of that type of content recommended to you. For example, within the period of our study, it was going on from June through August, and we were able to see that in the end of August, people started getting recommended some channels that they were not recommended previously, like a channel by Alexander Valmer, where a lot of propaganda is present. And then the videos from that channel started ending in recommendations of our Vatnik consumer. What's also interesting about the way the videos end up in your recommendations list is the categorization of videos. So YouTube marks videos according to different recommendations. They may be gaming, games, entertainment, video blogs, a lot of categories. But basically, if YouTube marks videos in the wrong way, sooner or later that video made up in your recommendation list. For example, you watch a content about computer games. It's logical that more video game recommendation videos will end up in your recommendation list. But we had cases when an open Russian misinformation, like reports about Russian victories in the battlefields, they started being marked as video game content. Yeah, right, exactly. So if you're watching basically videos about Minecraft, you may get a recommendation of this propaganda product because it ends up in the video games category. Well, Serhii, I think it's clear about the Vatnik category, so that the people consume that type of content and YouTube continues offering the same type of content to them. But what about those people who don't watch that content, but eventually they get it as recommendations? So why does it happen? Were you able to study this problem? Well, one of the examples, as I mentioned, is that when a person with similar interests was watching some propaganda materials, and then you may get it as recommendation as well. But if you don't click on that link, it's good. The platform reacts to that, they notice that you have no interest in that type of content, and within certain time that same video will not be recommended to you, because as recommendations are being formed, it's called in YouTube a video claimer. It's being ranged and it gets certain number of points. So if you don't watch that video, it will be removed from your recommendations. But again, in future, through other users, you may get it in your recommendations again. Let me explain it. So if you're watching a culinary show, you're watching only a culinary show, and then there are 1,000 more people watching the same video. And if some of them also watch Russian propaganda, all the people who watch culinary show, they will be foisted that Russian propaganda. So this is the way the algorithm works. It's not aimed to show you propaganda, it's aimed to show you something of your interest. So that's an instrument that YouTube uses, and Russia also use it, but not only Russia, but other totalitarian countries. So basically, YouTube has to not focus on one person, but focus on filtering the threats promoted by the totalitarian regimes for threats to the world and to Ukraine, and to have it removed from their content. And again, there is another topic of clickbait headers. It's not a YouTube model, it's a model of many media clickbait. So why such vivid headers are being created? Because if you watch a video, you spend more time on watching a video, and then an author of the video, they get some profit from it because it's advertising. After YouTube changed the algorithm of its work, you know, before the year 2012, it was promoting more of popular channels, but then they changed their algorithm and they started sharing costs or the advertising proceeds with other users, with the content creators. And every content creator, they start fighting for the number of views, and it's one of the reasons we have a lot of clickbait headers created that contain untrue content. So basically, YouTube business model is based on spreading conspiracy and distorted facts, because they pay money to the people who create those bright headers to have more audience engaged. And there is a contest then whose header is more bright and sensitive, something provocative. You know, whoever does it the best gets the best number of views then, and they get more profit. So it's not misinformation. It's not a Russian misinformation. It's something when YouTube supports the spreading of conspiracy and different bright distorted or like different distorted facts with the bright headers. So let me add that it's a business model which supports it. It's not like the concept of operation of YouTube, but it's the existing system of monetization. So when some specific conspiracy video will not get a lot of profits, but some specific videos, because for example, if person watches a video, they click on more links on that channel, and then there is no such monetization on other videos. So if a content creator is a conspirologist, and then they remove this monetization system but still get some profit. Thank you, Miss Oksana. So let's talk with you. Do you agree with all of the statements? What do you observe? Well, YouTube is intensely developing in Ukraine. Like previous year, we were issuing grants, and I think the next year we will be able to start supporting YouTube channels as a source of information for Ukrainian population. And now Ukraine ends up among 3 most intense content creators on YouTube in the Eastern Europe, and we should pay more attention to it. We should start talking about it as a market, as a powerful tool for informing the citizens. And since it's an instrument of communication, we should start and we are waging a war, we should start talking about some ethical standards, and the fact that we cannot make corporations make YouTube hear us so that they respond systemically. This is what we're facing. During this summer, we identified 46 channels of Russian propaganda where different horrible things were shown, like direct calls to genocide, dead bodies of the military. Spas, Tsargrad, all those channels were broadcasting it in YouTube lives, and we were not able to make YouTube hear us. It should be a mass complaint, it should be a complaint from government, So if they even close one channel, then Russia will open 100 more channels on the very next day, and they call them the very specifically that they you know, they find some vague names for that, like interesting information, curious news, peculiar news, something like that. So we should take care about bringing the propagandists to liability and forcing the corporations. And here my colleagues all smile sadly, but we have to force the corporation to fight for the quality of content. And our study also demonstrates that currently among 100 top channels which are most popular in Ukraine, among YouTube channels, 65 out of 100 are aimed at youth, at children, and we cannot even track all that trash of propaganda that is being poured into the ears of our children. And I think that it's a subject of a separate study. It should be investigated more thoroughly, and also we should talk more seriously to the corporation to bring this issue to a more serious level. Thank you, Mr. Edward. You work with YouTube, so we understand even in our environment we sometimes stumble upon the facts when people don't use Russian language in their everyday life, but still YouTube foists some Russian-speaking products to them. So does it tell us that Russian language is a priority for YouTube? Thank you for your question. In terms of language, it's a no-no, because it's just an algorithm that promotes a content. It's interested in having the consumers stay on the platform the longest possible, so that YouTube makes more money on that. So YouTube is socially important for many countries, not only Ukraine. But first of all, it's a business model. It's a huge corporation that makes money. We have to understand it and to cope with this. Why are Ukrainians offered Russian language content? There's a lot of factors, but one is algorithms that recommend content based on the general interest. For example, there are 6 of us, and let's imagine 2 of us consume not only Ukrainian but also Russian content, and the system will offer Russian language content to the rest of us too. Is it because we stay on the same Wi-Fi? No, it's because we have the same interests. We're all Ukrainian speaking, but the system sees it in the following way. Like, look, these 2, for example, they also speak Russian, so maybe those 4, the rest 4, also speak Russian, so let's offer them some Russian language content. And anyway, YouTube is the reflection of our socium, you know, the problem of 2 languages, the problem of domination of Russian content, not only on YouTube, but on our TV as well, just a couple of years ago. So is the reflection of the way our society works, the way our society consumes internet content. And there is also the problem of promotion of Russian, not Russian, but Russian language content, even by our channels, by our media. Even the critics of Russian content, they still carry the Russian language video on their channels. Some bloggers, when they take a video of some propagandist and they start criticizing it, they automatically have 2 languages in their video, and the system understands it, and they pick it up and they promote those videos, let alone the situations when our Ukrainian media make Ukrainian headers, Ukrainian covers with a video of an interview of a Russian speaker, like a good Russian, like Fagin or someone else. So people click there, and then there is a Russian language content, and the system sees it again, and they offer Russian language videos. Well, we've studied this issue based on the data that we've collected. So basically, if people watch more Ukrainian language videos, they will get more recommendations in Ukrainian. The only problem that we did not investigate is when people switch to Ukrainian language content after a long period of watching Russian language videos. But again, the system will recommend more Ukrainian videos, and there is a direct dependency. The more you watch Ukrainian language videos, the more you will be recommended Ukrainian language videos. So, Mr. Mikhail, how can we counter this content that is being promoted by Russians? How can we counter this problem in our Ukrainian society? Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to agree with Mr. Roman. In our center, we see this key problem, which is more profound, that YouTube itself as a platform, they should realize this threat that is coming from authoritarian and totalitarian states, that they will continue creating videos no matter how you demonetize them or shut them down. They will just, you know, this current policy of YouTube is a minor intervention. Like, there is a bad YouTube channel, so let's just make them less loud or freeze them. But at the same time, the content creator makes the same content in other YouTube channels, and basically the content continues being online and is being promoted. So those small, well, first of all, YouTube has to withdraw from that policy of the small interventions, small activities, but rather to develop a clear and transparent policy which is based on the countering harmful content. And we should work with this harmful content that contains misinformation. We should remove it everywhere. We should delegitimize it everywhere. We should not let it into this system. So that's the key requirement. Something that we try to communicate as we talk to YouTube representatives. And the main defense line of YouTube is they say that we've done a lot. We demonetized all the Russian bloggers. However, they continue working on that very same platform, just like in the case of this Russian propagandist Semen Pegov, or whatever's his name. So he's in temporarily occupied territory of Ukraine, somewhere in Donetsk region. So even given the rules of Google, they should create content in compliance with Ukrainian legislation. So even regardless of the terrible destruction and terrible war going on, let's just move along the YouTube standards. A person is located in the territory that Google recognizes as the sovereign territory of Ukraine, and they make up some games with explosions of a heavy military material. They create content with a lot of subscribers, and that content is not being shut down. It's not being removed, no matter how much we complain. But that content is not being liquidated, and there is multiple cases like this one with Pegov. So if we talk about some possible way we can move further on as a civil society and the government in our interaction with the video platforms, we should move along this single front, and we should explain to the platforms that the core of the problem is in this propaganda content from totalitarian states, and this is what YouTube should work with the content itself. Well, Mr. Mikhailov, we understand that it's a process that is not always quick. On practice, we understand that it requires a lot of time, and what we can do right now is, like, do we have any steps that we can take that will not depend directly on YouTube administrators? Well, look, the main step that we can take, it depends on what we see, and then we get more recommendations on that topic. So there is some lag, there is some time that we should clear our news, our videos, our history of the views, and then we have to also, on the other hand, develop our Ukrainian YouTube. So we should extend grants for YouTube bloggers, so we should create more Ukrainian content if we think, and it is so, that YouTube is a perspective platform that is quickly developing in Ukraine, and that helps in creating the political content that is being viewed, that is popular. So if we say that Russians wage a war with us in YouTube, our response as a civil society or journalists should be such that we create our Ukrainian content, which allows us further on to engage Ukrainian viewers, and this is how we can naturally clear our YouTube space, our Ukrainian YouTube space from Russian content. But nevertheless, I think that this process, the work with the platforms, it should be going on in parallel with that process, because even if we take like top 100 of channels, if they're all Ukrainians, if 90% of the most popular will be Ukrainian language content, it will not finally solve the problem of a harmful content on the platform. And this is what the technical giant Google should take care of, since they own that platform. Well, Mr. Eduard, maybe it's a question to you, or maybe someone else will be ready to answer. We know that the cyber police was making such a communities of indifferent Ukrainians who were helping to block certain resources. So does it work for YouTube? Yes, there is a system of complaints on the platform that works in quite a peculiar way, but they scan the content for complaints. Like if you know, there is a flag under the video that you can click on and complain for misinformation, fake news, or something like that. So the platform scans it. So the bigger is the number of complaints, the sooner the platform reacts, and they take that decision on their own. Maybe they even cannot understand the content, and they will hand it over to moderation by human personnel. For example, there is a million complaints for a propaganda video, and it's being moderated by a person who is outside the context of the war, and they say, I see no violation here, and then they can dismiss all the complaints. So please don't exclude the human factor here too. But there is an algorithm in place anyway. The bigger problem is that we should just get rid of the habit of consumption of Russian content. It's like, what's the difference thing for many people, you know? If there is no difference for people what language they prefer to consume the content in, so then the platform just sees it in the same way. So if there is no stimuli from the state, like, we should communicate it in the following way, that if you view videos in Russian language, you pay to Russian bloggers. So if they say that they demonetize these videos in Russia, yes, that's true, because they don't get money in Russia, yes, but those same videos are being viewed by Ukrainians, and Russian bloggers get money for your views. So if you watch a propaganda channel that has monetization activated back in year 2016, that channel gets monetization, they pay taxes, and those taxes then fly at our homes as missiles or drones. Well, unfortunately, our society is a little bit childish, and unless you communicate it to them, they will find out by themselves it with a lot of delay, with a very long leg. Mr. Serhii, you wanted to add something? Yes, like Mykola said, if YouTube removes some propagandists, they will one way or another stay at the platform. So basically in September, YouTube removed a channel Skotaritera, a propagandist who was supporting Russia. So they removed it in August, but we've documented the creation of other channels with interview of Scott Ritter, and he ends up in your recommendations anyway. So yes, the channels are being removed. Solovyov's channel is being removed, but then he is still present in YouTube as in other videos by other bloggers. So I was looking for a video and it was removed from YouTube, and it's called the gray zone. Basically a video which is violating the community standards, and before all the community reacts, it's still present. So I was trying to find that video. It was already removed, but I was able to find the same video with the same header, but on other channels. This is how Russian propaganda works. So it's a matter of how responsible the platform itself is. They know about the problem. They're aware of the problem of conspiracy, of misinformation, and they reported themselves that they are not going to remove them because they want the recommendations to provide less than 1% of such video, but they don't want to remove them because they have a very complicated process of video verification to understand whether it's a conspiracy video or not. But so far they refuse to have those videos removed. And still we can find the videos on how the baking soda cures cancer, and there was no landing on the moon and stuff like that. Thank you very much, dear colleagues, dear guests. If you have any comments or questions, any thoughts on this problem, please get involved in our conversation. Well, we've talked about 2 users. We've just picked 2 out of all those studies. So for our materials, we've picked 2 very characteristic personalities, and within 2 or 3 weeks we're going to develop recommendations for the government, for the authorities of European Union who actively moderate YouTube. So we will provide recommendations on what the state has to do, and we will disseminate those recommendations to all those interested parties. So another question for those who study YouTube. So what's going on with Ukrainian content right now? Are we able to jump into this train? Are we intensifying our pace of development? Well, let me add something here. We work with Ukrainian-speaking bloggers. I'm a consumer of Ukrainian language content myself. So yes, there was a great boom that started right after the 24th of February. Many Ukrainians who were providing content in the Russian language, they either removed their channels or switched to Ukrainian. So those authors are multiple, and many Russians now weep, like, where's all that good content gone? So all those people who were watching YouTube, they see that the niches are empty. You can occupy a niche, you can create content, and there is demand for it. People want to watch content, people want to consume content, and we have to stimulate them for that, because a lot of authors, they understand that the competition in the platform is pretty high. You have to invest a lot, and the monetization in YouTube may not even cover the expenses, because in order to start making videos you have at least to buy a camera, and you just may not have money for that. And probably in that case we will need some materials, probably, if not grants from the government, at least some materials that would tell you how to do it. We tell it to the authors how not to violate the rules, how to make videos. We do consulting, we have sources to inform our Ukrainian-speaking authors, even for those with whom we don't communicate directly. What to do, we tell them what to do in order not to violate the rules, what are the novelties on YouTube, and we would like to watch such things coming from many parties that are involved in this work. And to wrap it up, I would like to inform that texted.org.ua and the Centers for Strategic Communications, we create a working group that is about to develop recommendations, and it will be a task force that will deal with YouTube issues, and we invite all our colleagues who are interested in this to join the efforts. And I hope that after a year we will be able to meet, and we would be able to state that we were able to convince YouTube to change their policies. We will have a number of levels of response, because I agree with what my colleague says. Even if we talk about the language, our study shows that only 20% of Ukrainian YouTubers broadcast standards in Ukrainian language. So we talk about ethics standards here, because if you watch, you can see racism and sexism there and some other horrible things. But again, it's about the responsibility and transparency, because we have the new legislation on media in force, according to which YouTube channels can be registered as media, and we should explain it to them what are the advantages of doing so. It's a matter of recommendations, of advice, of monetization, and basically it's a huge range of matters that we have to work on to formulate. So there's a lot of work ahead. So basically civil organizations who work with you can get involved in this work. So dear friends, get involved in this initiative. I want to thank everybody who takes part in this today's event. Thank you very much for your study. We understand that there's a lot of work to be done, and we hope that really in a year the situation will be completely different. So thank you very much. We would like to also thank our security and defense forces for the opportunity to have events like this. Let's continue working together for our victory, and glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.
Ні, це наші читачі задають питання про те.
Ми ж спитали, нікого не було.
Давайте